Welcome back to the podcast. Today, we're going to be discussing relationships. You know what? There's been a lot of talk about relationships. There's talks about what do you bring to the relationship and so forth. But I want to know, what are the prerequisites for you as a man in finding the right woman, and the questions that might arise in, having that process, that dating process, of actually courting process, of actually getting to know a woman? What do you look for?
It's a very good question. I think the relationship is so very important because it gives a man the grounding that he needs, and it gives the woman the grounding that she needs if she finds the right man. First of all, I like to probe a woman's mind. I like to have a conversation to see where what her ideas about a relationship, how it should look like to her. I want to find out about her own upbringing. Does she come from a structured household? Does she have mum and dad? Did she have mum and dad in the same household together, or did she grow up in a single household? Did she what is her religious beliefs? And trying to find out if her religious beliefs, philosophy, and upbringing and character is compatible with my own. I think there's not enough of that with relationships, as far as having compatibility in not just mentality but also in character. Also, the occupation. If you're in the same industry, it could bring you even closer. If you was from opposing industries where she lives one lifestyle, you live another lifestyle, the time difference, what you have for a relationship to build together might not be sufficient enough. If you're always abroad, or she's always away, or she's got lives a certain lifestyle, and according to the occupation that she has, there could start to become problems of neglect and not having enough time for each other. Full-time work has an impact on us as far as it takes us away from our family and social life and me time. A lot of people are not entrepreneurs and they don't work for themselves, so they find themselves in routines where they work, and full-time work people tend to spend more time at work than they do their own family.
That's right.
And so imagine if your loved one you're not seeing enough of, vice and the strain on the relationship that would take, it's not gonna bring forth a harmonious, fruitful relationship where both man and woman is happy. You see what I'm saying to you? So I look for these qualities, and very, very important is communication. How does the woman communicate with me, and how do I communicate with her? Is she comfortable with having conversations about things that she may either not be used to talking about or uncomfortable in talking about? She has to free herself from that shyness or that reservedness, because it takes time for you to know the true them. I don't think you can know someone in a space of a month or 2 months or so forth and say to yourself you're in a serious relationship. It may take a year. It may take 6 months, depending on how honest and how forward a person is. There's many layers to character. Yeah. And then how many times have people got into a relationship and then later on down the line, 2 years, 3 years, I never knew it was like that. I never knew she was like that. People start to become shocked when they see another side of this person. If you took the time out to know the real them, not the facade that they put on to try to impress you, because that's what we do when we first meet someone that we're trying to win over. Yep. We try to impress them. So we got our best face on, or this on, or that on. We dress well. We got all the things to entice, but we haven't done has one done the right necessary work to unpack and, you know, get past the many layers of their partner in order to get to the real them. So that if someone, a random stranger, was to say something about their partner, they would look at that same statement or story and say, that's not my partner.
Yeah.
Because I know the real them, and that was that particular incident wasn't the results of. It was the results of a reaction.
Yeah.
It was in a circumstance where they had to do something. They wouldn't have just done that for no reason, because the real them does not reflect that.
Yeah.
So that's where communication comes in, and I know a lot of people are not good at communicating, which we need to start doing more of if we're going to have better, healthier relationships and a more of a stronger family structure and foundation. The communication and having deeper, intimate connections with things in common, I do believe that when you find the right woman, you're going to do a lot of things in common together.
Yes.
Not that you live your life and then she lives her life, and then when you're ready to, let's go and do something on the weekend.
Yeah.
No, you're going to be doing things together.
Yeah.
And so you're going to see when they're going to know, people who know you are going to know you in a relationship because they're going to see you with your partner.
That's some biblical talks right there.
Yeah.
Two becomes one.
Yeah. They're going to.
Is that Spice Girls? I can't remember. One of the two.
I think it was Spice Girls. It was Spice Girls. I think it was Spice Girls. Yeah.
I'm loving that though. But you know what? The way you're talking is very family orientated. Okay? Because as men, we have both short-term mating strategies and long-term mating strategies. And what you're discussing there seems to be a very long-term mating strategy and a very monogamous mating strategy. But we've come off an age where there's more than just monogamy. There is polygyny or polygamy. There is polyamory. So in terms of relationships, where do you see is the right way to go?
According to your tradition, this is why belief is so important. Because the Yoruba religion is a system with a calendar and ceremonies that they do throughout the year, as you know, marriage, birthing ceremony, naming ceremony, certain dress code. What do they believe in? Yorubas, they have, depending on what class you come from, there are those Yorubas who have more than one wife and so forth. But there's a guide to doing that. You don't just do it off of your own initiative. There's a code that you follow. Let's say if you're as a man, following the Yoruba Ifa system, I see it as healthy for you to get a woman who follows a similar system to what you're into, for you to move in tandem.
So back to the compatibility.
You have to have
mating preferences.
Yeah, you have to
should definitely be compatibility.
Yes, you definitely have to have certain similar religious philosophy. Like if I was Jewish, I would want preferably to look for a Jewish wife.
Yeah.
If I was Christian, I would look for a Christian wife. If I was Muslim, I would look for a Muslim wife. I wouldn't want to look for something that was alien to me, because it might be too. I'm not saying it can't happen, but the challenges of that relationship might be too strenuous, too strainful.
Okay.
For us to get past our religious differences. So it just makes it more easier for, let's say, a Rasta man to be with a Rasta woman.
I love that.
Understand? And so where they have the similarity in belief and philosophy, and they respect each other's.
So I like that whole compatibility. It's kind of like to do with, I don't know, shared values, shared beliefs, shared cultures, shared mores, and so forth. I also wanted to know about authority. That's another a good topic and a good thing as well. With the compatibilities and the similarities, are we saying that a man and a woman are equal within a relationship in terms of power and authority? Or is the man, as traditionally goes, traditionally a man is the head of the household, or in modern times, is it just completely equal?
Well,
Or let me go even a step further. Are women, should women be given that power? There is the whole talk about the black woman is God. The black woman is God. She's the matriarchy. She should be, the leader of the family. So I want to know, where do you stand on that?
Depending on the tradition. The Yorubas have a term called Ajay, which is feminine power, which is the balance of Ashe, which is masculine power.
Jeez, repeat that once more. That's some powerful. That's a powerful.
There's a Yoruba word called Ajay.
Ajay.
AJE, which deals with feminine power, which is the balance to what we call in Yoruba Ashe, which is masculine power.
Okay.
All right. The woman was revered in the Yoruba society as powerful, and without the woman, things didn't happen. In some cases, the female energy dominated. In some cases, the masculine energy dominated. And in some cases, feminine and masculine worked together. I understand in the Ashanti tradition that major decisions didn't take place without the woman's approval.
Okay.
And especially when the Ashanti kingdom used to choose a king or a queen, there's a council of women that would have to give the okay. Like the women played a very, very important role. I think knowledge of self, bloodline, the woman knowing herself and the role that she will play, because some women like men, that either introvert or the extrovert. There's women with strong personality, outgoing. They're not the typical stay-at-home women. Because in the African society, you have female warriors.
Yeah,
you got women that do masculine jobs, and so they're not the type of women you can just say, stay at home and da, da, da. No, they're active women.
Yeah,
with strong personalities. Those type of women come from a particular bloodline, and they shouldn't feel the need to not have that dominant, outgoing personality because the man says, I'm the man of the house. Well, I do think that strong, outgoing women have to be around men that understand their strong personality. They wouldn't be able to just get any man, because I don't think a strong woman, very athletic and very independent in thinking, I don't think she'll be able to get with a man with the same qualities, because it'll be like, who's in charge here? But the woman that is that strong in character would probably have to have more of a toned down, calmer man that is understanding of a need to be driven, ambitious, and out there. So character, temperament, emotional understanding is very, very important and should be discussed before they get into any serious relationship. They have to get to the root of why there could be potential conflict or why they would argue over something, because somewhere down the line the wires are crossed. Yeah. And I want you want your partner to be happy. Even though they're happy with you, you want them to be happy in their own personal life, their own achievements and desires and dreams and so forth. You want them to be happy. I don't want no one putting their life on hold to please me, but I want, as long as I'm happy with what I'm doing, and she's happy with what she's doing, and we're growing together, and she ain't gonna have no animosity towards me because I'm denying her of something.
Okay.
Or I'm not gonna have any animosity towards her because I'm denying her of something. Once we get our true feelings out there, and she's not holding back, she's not keeping in the back of her mind the real her. If she's put all her cards on the table, I put all my cards on the table, then now we can start to get into some proper relationship building. You understand what she's we can't. Once we agree on something, like it's like you're saying, like you're in marriage and you give your vows, you shouldn't break them. That's where the distrust comes from. If you've said something and you've been, you're dead serious with it, you have to now commit to that.
Yeah.
And that's what, your word has to be your bond. And that's where people, if you're the type of man to want more than one wife, you have to have told her that beforehand. You can't then be with her and then start to, oh, no, I want to go and see someone else now. Yeah, stay at home. I want to go and see. You can't do that. Yeah. And she can't do that because she should have said it when she had the opportunity to say it. And that's why the conversation is important.
I like that. I like that.
But also, a man shouldn't go against his own nature,
Yeah.
If a man knows that he's got his eyes are not glued to just one woman, and he's a type of man, depending on what character he comes from, what character he is, or what the character and the class he comes from. Certain people from the upper class, they tended to have more than one wife because they was in a position to do it. They back then in ancient Yoruba land or ancient Egypt, it was what you called high value, high net worth individuals, and they was in a position to do it, and they had more than one wife. So if you are a high net worth individual man, you're already letting that woman know, I am not just gonna have you. It's gonna be you and another 3, 4, 5 women. And if she agrees to that, then they should be cool.
Because it's almost selfish, actually, to have all the resources.
Yeah, I mean,
to have all the great genetics, but don't share it with the world.
Yeah.
Oh man.
I mean, tradition is important. Yeah. I wouldn't do anything that didn't make me happy. I think life's too short.
You know what? Because men tend to have a short-term mating strategy. But I want to know, what are your thoughts on women, exploring and practicing their short-term mating strategy? In our modern age, we call that promiscuity. What are your thoughts on that?
If the woman is that way inclined, she can't be doing it just to follow her friends. This is why knowledge of self is so important. If you are that way inclined naturally, and you have a tendency to be a bit more free with yourself, you're more forward, you've got more relaxed attitudes about sex and sexual expression, and again, it comes from a particular character, a particular bloodline, and so forth, where the women, particular group of women, behave that way. If you are not frigid, if you're not reserved and you're open, and you're a woman comfortable with your sexuality to the degree where you have more than one partner, bearing in mind there's the risk of sexual STD, sexual transmitted disease. But if you are doing it with certain men, let's say it's about 4 men that this woman links, she knows that man, and so forth. If she's wired a certain way, she's gonna do it anyway. But she has to be doing it because it's right for her and her soul. She can't just be following society. And that means knowledge of self is dictating her actions.
I wanted to know, because I know you're heavy on, the African traditions and cultures and spiritual systems. I wanted to know, in the African continent, in the African milieu itself, was polyandry, practice? The sexual exploration, the sexual or the marriage between one woman with multiple men. Was that something practiced on the motherland?
Yes, but the woman, she came from the upper class.
Okay.
So she would have been either an empress, a queen, or a chiefess, and thus she would have had multiple sexual exploits with her male slaves.
Okay.
And servants. And she would sleep with certain soldiers.
Okay.
But because she was at the top of the food chain, so to say, she had the opportunity. It's like, she could have her cake and eat it. She could have,
because in our society, there's a certain phrase called slut shaming, but you're telling me that inside of certain African cultures, in certain statuses, this was practiced. This was just normally practiced, and it wasn't something that was shamed or looked down upon. It was just something that was normal, that was expected.
In indigenous societies, whether it be the Africans or the Aborigines or the Native Americans, it was a status symbol, it was a class thing, power thing. People who practiced that were affluent in their tribe.
Okay.
It wasn't, not anybody could do it. They was in a position to do it. And that's what gave them their status.
Jeez.
And so it was the way a person walks down the street with a Rolex watch or ice chain around their neck. Some tribal men walked through Africa and they had like 10 wives. But it was a status thing. And they was in a position to do it. They took care of all their wives. Just like, in the Bible you have King Solomon. And King Solomon was a famous king, and he had numerous amount of wives. But he was a king and he was rich and he was in a position to do it. So it's not like he had all those wives and didn't have to take care of them. He had the money to take care of the resources. He didn't struggle with it. So I think when Westerners, because they don't have the knowledge, the cultural information to put into context what it is that their brain is doing, they see other people do it, or they hear about other people do it, have multiple wives, or they hear a woman have multiple men, and they say, if she can do it, I can do it. But Cleopatra was a queen. She was a head of state, and she had money, and she had influence, and she had power. So when she's doing it, she's just not, she's not Stacey from the council estate. That's still trying to, figure out what she's doing with her life.
Okay.
She ain't, Bianca that's got a trapper boyfriend. And she wants to go and link a footballer.
Everybody knows the Bianca,
Yeah. So it's you see, I understand where they're coming from. I understand why certain women in the Western Hemisphere, the Biancas and the the Jennifers are thinking like that, but they are not putting it into perspective that it was a status thing, a class thing, and you have to be in a certain position to do it where you wasn't looked upon in any derogatory way. It was a sign of your power and your status and your influence that you was a woman that could have multiple men and not be looked down upon, or you was a man that had multiple women and you could take care of all of them, and you wasn't looked in any other way, shape or form because you was in a position to do it. It was healthy for people's in the position to have multiple wives, or for women to have multiple husbands, because it was multiplying the tribe and giving off more the descendants that would enrich the tribe, make it bigger, stronger, so forth. In that way, the dynasty was bigger. And so an heir to the throne was always intact. Yeah.
Also, it seems as though you're a very strong proponent of the nuclear family. You yourself coming from a nuclear family. I want to know, what is it really necessary in this day and age? And what are the benefits of the nuclear family?
It's important in this day and age because a strong family unit gives foundation to a strong children. You hear today about women with daddy issues, or daddyless daughters and so forth, or boys without fathers. Their fathers are either dead or in jail, or left their mothers, and so they don't have an important male role model to look up to. So once that starts happening, there's already a disturbance in child's mind in regards to parenting. You heard of the term that women can't really raise men?
Yeah.
Well, therein lies the truth. The boy child would need a man to grow him into a man, and a woman, or a young girl rather, needs a woman to teach her about woman things. There's only so much that the man could do if he was a man with a daughter.
Yeah.
The women can get into the women aspects and feelings or puberty that a woman would go through. The woman can best guide those feelings if she has the knowledge of herself. She has to be educated about herself too, about herself as well. That's why education is so important. What was the question?
The importance, the value, and the purpose of actually having a nuclear family and the benefits it offers.
Yeah, it brings discipline. It gives order. It can steer the child in a certain way, and if your customs are strong and they're important to you, and they're healthy, by you passing on those customs and traditions to your children, you keep a certain cultural order continuing from generation to generation, much like what the Asians do, or much like what Jewish people do. Strong traditions and customs and laws, male and female, gives birth to a healthy family, which gives the family a healthy community and helps them move in tandem so they think as one, and it ties into economy and so forth. And heard of Claude Anderson, group economics. So these things you can practice when you believe you are a community, because there's some groups that are they don't behave as communities, and they don't know what a community looks like, because they've been denied a community living for so long that the very term community is strange to them.
So, we've touched on the nuclear family, the importance of it, the benefits it offers. I want your thoughts on pedagogy. I want your thoughts on the education of the children. Is it the responsibility of the woman? Should the woman homeschool these children? Should the father school these children? Should there be a particular age that the mother schools the children and passes the child over to the father, and so forth? Or should they be state educated? Because it seems as though that, as you're talking about with colonialism, the breakdown of the culture and the traditions, the moment that you go into the school system, for example, with you're going into a Roman Catholic school system, which is completely opposite and against your African Protestant upbringing.
I think therein lies a problem, because we're further in what they call neo-colonialism. You know something to be wrong, but then you still have children and take them to the same school that you weren't comfortable in going to yourself. So if you didn't like school when you was at school, what makes you think your son is going to like school or your daughter's going to like school? You didn't like school. You was cutting class. You was trying to get away from Western education, but you want to then have children to take them back to school? It don't make sense. It's neo-colonialism. We're forced to do homeschooling just because we don't have our own black schools. That's where homeschooling comes from, the need for homeschooling comes from. You understand? Because we're forced into doing that because we don't have our own school. What kind of community doesn't have its own schools? Because if you go to Muslims have their own schools.
Jews have
their own schools. Any thriving, productive, outgoing, forward-thinking community or nation of people or tribe or whatever have their own schools. You understand? So if you belong to a group of people, like the African Caribbean community, that doesn't have its own school, something's wrong there. Then if you don't have the time for homeschooling because you're working a 9 to 5, you're forced to take your child to the state school.
Yes.
Where those challenges that we spoke about earlier, your child is going to go through, falling into a bad crowd, not getting good grades, negative influence by their peers, all these things your child's going to go through because they don't have an alternative. See what I'm saying to you? So all of those things are going to, and then that's where the whole gang activity and the criminal class starts to be born out of marginalization, frustration, disenfranchised, unemployment. If you don't have good grades, because this society that we're in, you cannot move forward without grades, good grades and qualifications and certificates. Your child is rebellious and doesn't finish school or gets expelled or kicked out of school. All the numerous things that they're probably going on in their home life and so forth, and not being able to fully express what they're going through emotionally, and thus their actions become destructive, and the teachers can't reach particular types of children, they fall into a destructive downward spiral where the chances of their survival is slim. And we are not speaking about that enough or putting solutions across to avoid those negative outcomes, especially when you're dealing with black people in lower income classes from particular crime-ridden areas such as Hackney, Brixton, Tottenham, Lewisham, etc., which really has a history, generation before them, that was really criminalized. They've been given a bad reputation. They've developed a bad reputation in their own generation, and they've given the area that they're from a bad reputation. And so the next generation that follows or falls into that trap do what the previous generation was doing, and thus the area becomes infested with criminal-minded, emotionally disturbed, prone to a lifestyle of gangs, and all the social ills are shaping generations upon generations to behave a certain way, and they start doing it as if it's normal, becomes normalized, so they can't free themselves from a particular lifestyle because that's all they know, because now it's all they know. Yeah. So this is how you socially engineer a cold and a twisted, psychologically twisted members of society.
So you know what? I wanted to round this up, get just really round things up with this one, in the sense that we've gone from relationships, we've gone into the nuclear family, and what the nuclear family, I would say the end goal of the nuclear family is to produce fully functioning adults or fully functioning human beings. So we've gone through the education stage. We now need to prepare the children to enter into the economic market, right? So I want to know, because you've talked heavily about entrepreneurship in contradistinction to a 9-to-5 employment route. So would it be, what would be the best thing for those children that are in that nuclear family, that have gone through that homeschooling education and even further education as well? Would it be the parents' duty to set up some form of, business or economic route that they can go through? Or would you foster that entrepreneurial spirit in your children to now go out there to bring value to the world, find a problem that they can solve, to bring a business about? What's your thoughts? Would you create something for them, or would you say, no, my son, my daughter, it's now your time to go out there and create?
Both. I think you got examples. Take for example Donald Trump. He comes from a family that was rich, and his dad already made a name for himself, and so it inspired the children to inherit a business, and thus carry on the family business and continue the success. You could come from a family that is not entrepreneurial, but they have children with a business-minded character. So child can take it upon themselves to go out there and start a business. Or you got some families that are born and they're mechanics. They're good with their hands. So they could have train their child to be a mechanic and go out there and work for a company, or they can set up their own company and get their children to be a part of the family business. I think both are important. Sometimes we need to go out and work for someone else to get the experience, the know-how, and then once we get the knowledge and so forth, we shouldn't get comfortable. We should get that knowledge, work for someone maybe 5 years, whatever, and then leave and then have the confidence to set up your own business because now you know how it works. Entrepreneurship and being self-reliant is definitely the way forward. If we can, as a group of people, master being entrepreneurs and being the top of all their industries that we go into, not just to participate in the industry like construction and so forth, but to be the master of it, like to have your own company, you employ your own people. That would be the way. That would be the way forward. But that takes a level of community thinking. Multiculturalism. You got many groups of people living in close proximities to each other, and we measure people by merit, not by looks. So, if a person has the credentials to do the job, you're gonna get that person, just because they're the best at what they do. You're not gonna then say, "Well, I can't employ you because you look like this skin color, or you're from that religion." No, you're gonna get the people who are the best at what they do to get the job done, because you want the best results. Multiculturalism allows us to tap into all different types of talent in order to enhance what it is that one is trying to do. If you belong to a community which has so much abundance of talent, where you don't need to look outside of that community for expertise, for advice, for counsel, for support. You don't need to do that. Like the Chinese community, Chinatown and so forth, they don't tend to go outside Chinatown. They just got everything they need within their community. Everyone's doing something that, if they was ever in need of something, the Chinese man or woman knows who to go to. So they're able to be insular, but they've set up their community where they can behave that way. If you happen to belong to a very structured community, you should definitely employ your own and take care of your own and service your own talent. If you don't belong to such a community, you should take the best via merit, via expertise, because at the end of the day, you want the best result. You shouldn't settle for less. You should strive for excellence. Over time, if you're deep enough in your thoughts to want to have an organized community of peoples who are from the same background as you, and you're in a position financially to do it, you can now start to source particular groups of people that would enrich what you're doing, and then thus build a hub of people who have the same similar mindset and skills as you. But that's not an easy thing to do.
Yeah.
That is dealing with people, their characters, their personalities, their ambitions, their interests, and some things can be very conflicting. I want to ask someone to put themselves through unnecessary stress trying to find something that is too demanding of them. But if they strove for finding the best talent, sourcing the best talent, then yes, the immediate things are being provided for. The long-term goal would be trying to achieve an organized, structured community such as the Chinese, the Arabs, or the Jews.
Perfectly. Well said. So you know what? This actually ends and this concludes the relationship section of the show. If you are loving the content so far, please remember to hit the subscribe button down below. And if you want to see more content like this, please, there should be a link somewhere around for another video. Check us out. And, thank you once again.
No problem.
Let's do this, baby. Let's do this.